There's something about being told no that stays with you, not because it stops you, but because in that one moment, something inside you wakes up. It's the sharp pause in your chest. It's that cold second when the world looks at all your effort and says, "Not good enough." You replay it. You rethink every step. And if you're not careful, it becomes a story you carry. One that whispers, "You don't belong here." But what if that voice was wrong? What if the no was never about your worth, but about the path that wasn't meant for you? You see, rejection isn't the end. It's a redirection, raw and honest. It strips away the illusions, the should-have-beens, and lays in front of you a choice. Sit in the silence, or step forward, different, stronger, unshaken. I've been there, standing in front of that metaphorical slammed door, asking why it happened. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking why and started asking, what now? And that question, that shift, changed everything. This isn't a story about bouncing back. This is about becoming someone the world no longer overlooks, someone who no longer waits to be chosen, but instead chooses themselves. So if you're here because life said no, stay, because this might just be the moment that makes you. It's easy to feel invisible when you're overlooked, like all your effort faded the moment someone else chose to look away. There's no announcement, no explanation, just silence. And in that silence, 1,000 insecurities rise. But that moment, it's not a verdict. It's a mirror. It's not about who they are. It's about who you decide to become next. Because how you react to being ignored reveals far more than the reason you were ignored in the first place. You can let it shrink you, make you quieter, more doubtful, smaller. Or you can let it sharpen you, not into someone angry or bitter, but into someone unshakably self-aware. The truth is, someone else's inability to see your worth has nothing to do with your value. That's their blindness, not your lack of light. And if you need their eyes to shine, your fire was never yours to begin with. The Stoics, people like Marcus Aurelius, they knew something we forget. That what matters isn't the moment of rejection, but the meaning we give it. You can't control who sees you, but you can decide how you see yourself. So ask yourself, what would you do today if their opinion didn't matter? Would you speak louder, walk taller, breathe easier? Now do that. Because when your self-worth no longer depends on recognition, you become the kind of person no one can overlook. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your value. Not your boss, not your friends, not even the voice in your head that sometimes doubts you at 2 a.m. Your worth doesn't start when someone notices you, and it doesn't disappear when they don't. The world will always have people who miss what's right in front of them. Some won't see your strength because it's quiet. Others won't understand your brilliance because it doesn't come in loud packaging. That's not your fault, and it's not your burden to fix. You were not made to be understood by everyone. Marcus Aurelius didn't chase applause. He wrote for himself. He knew that your dignity lives in your response, not in their recognition. So when someone dismisses you, don't make it your mission to prove them wrong. Prove yourself right. Instead of chasing their approval, build a life that feels good to wake up to. Something that doesn't need validation to feel real. Something built on effort, not opinion. The longer you let someone's silence dictate your voice, the quieter your own sense of self becomes. But when you choose to stand firm, calm, clear, and unshaken, you reclaim something no one else can take. the right to feel whole without applause. And maybe that's the most powerful kind of confidence there is. The kind that doesn't ask to be seen, because it already knows it exists. When rejection shows up, it never knocks politely. It barges in, and suddenly, the room you thought was full of potential feels cold, empty. But here's the thing. Pain is energy. It can burn you, or it can become fuel. And what you choose to do with that fuel, that's where the story changes. You don't have to force yourself to get over it. You don't have to fake a smile. But you can make a quiet choice to step into the things that bring you back to life. A favorite book, a long walk, fixing something with your hands, laughing over coffee with a friend who's seen your mess and stayed anyway. These are not distractions. They are recalibrations. Every joyful moment, no matter how small, helps rewrite the narrative that pain tries to impose. It reminds you that life is still good, still rich, even when something has gone wrong. The Stoics weren't joyless. They believed in simplicity, in beauty found in the ordinary. Marcus Aurelius wrote about finding peace while surrounded by war. You can find joy surrounded by doubt. The goal isn't to erase pain. The goal is to give it a softer place to sit, so it doesn't take up all the space. And slowly, sometimes without you even noticing, joy returns. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, like breath, like hope whispering, "You're still here." Rejection has a way of shrinking your world. One no echoes louder than 100 yes moments, and suddenly, everything feels smaller. Your confidence, your energy, your voice. But hear this, that one moment does not define you. It's just a dot on the map, not the landscape, not the journey. We've all had moments that shook us, that made us pause and question if we're even going the right way. But the truth is, one moment, no matter how loud, can't erase the miles you've already walked. You're not the missed opportunity. You're the years of growth, the habits you fought for, the quiet strength it took to keep showing up. You're the hard conversations you faced, the promises you kept when no one was watching, the love you gave even when it wasn't returned. One no can't compete with that. You're not just someone waiting to be chosen. You're someone who's already done the choosing to stay, to heal, to build, to believe again. The world may label you by your setbacks, but you don't have to answer to that name. You have the right to rewrite the script, starting today. So take a deep breath, and remember, your worth is built over a lifetime, not judged in a second. And no rejection, no matter how heavy, has the power to undo that. The first instinct after rejection? To react, to lash out, to prove something. And in that rush, we often give away the very thing we should hold most tightly, our center. But calmness is not about pretending everything is okay. It's not silence out of fear. It's the strength to pause, to observe, and to choose your next move. Not out of hurt, but out of clarity. That kind of stillness, it's rare, it's powerful, and it's deeply misunderstood. Because we live in a world that celebrates noise. The louder the reaction, the more real it seems. But the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they knew the opposite. True power is quiet. It doesn't need to be validated in volume. When you stay calm in the face of rejection, you're not suppressing emotion. You're mastering it. You're telling yourself, this pain is real, but it doesn't own me. And that mastery gives you space to reflect, to redirect, to recover with dignity. It keeps you from saying something you'll regret or becoming someone you're not. Calm doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't let the feelings steer the ship. So the next time someone underestimates you, pauses before responding, or chooses someone else, you don't need to react right away. You can choose stillness. Because sometimes the most powerful answer is, I'm still here, unshaken. There's something hollow about trying to be seen. That moment you raise your hand, raise your voice, raise your worth, only to be passed over again and again, until eventually you wonder, what's the point? But here's the truth no one tells you. Being overlooked doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you were looking for recognition in the wrong place. Attention is fragile, fleeting. It comes and goes with trends, with timing, with other people's moods. But impact? That's built. You don't need to fight to be noticed. You need to build something that speaks for itself. A skill, a craft, a body of work. Something real. Something you can touch when the world goes quiet. Because the people who last, the ones we remember, aren't the loudest. They're the most consistent. They didn't chase applause. They built something so rooted, so meaningful, that eventually the world couldn't look away. Marcus Aurelius didn't tweet his wisdom. He wrote in silence, in private, for himself. And now, centuries later, we're still quoting him. So stop begging for validation. Start building, not to impress, but to express. To leave something behind that proves you were here. You created. You mattered. That's not attention. That's legacy. We're taught to see obstacles as walls, things to avoid, things that stop us. And when we hit them, it's easy to think, this wasn't meant to be. But what if that's not true? What if the very thing in your way was the way? Marcus Aurelius said it best. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That rejection, that delay, that person who walked away, it might not be blocking your path. It might be shaping it. There's a strange kind of freedom in this mindset. Because now failure isn't final. It's fuel, a pivot point, not an exit. Instead of asking, why me? You start asking, what now? And that shift, that moment where pain becomes direction, is where things begin to change. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop needing permission. You start seeing every closed door as a cue to knock louder, or to build your own. You turn the frustration into motion, the heartbreak into focus, the silence into clarity. And slowly, the path reveals itself, not in spite of the obstacle, but because of it. That's how resilience is born, not from smooth roads, but from the ones that forced us to grow stronger feet. The wall isn't the end. It's the invitation. So climb. When you're ignored, the urge to speak rises fast, to shout, to defend, to remind them you're still here. But sometimes, silence speaks louder than anything you could say. Not all silence is weakness. Some silence is a choice, a strategy, a line drawn with invisible ink. It says, I don't need your recognition to remain whole. I'm not begging for space, I'm reclaiming mine. The world misunderstands quiet people. We're taught to perform, to constantly prove, to stay in the spotlight. But the Stoics knew otherwise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." What does that mean? It means when they ignore you, you don't mirror their emptiness. You answer with presence, with principle, with peace. Silence, when intentional, is power. It allows you to redirect your energy, to build instead of beg, to reflect instead of react. And in that stillness, you discover something. Your self-worth doesn't echo from applause. It's quiet, rooted, steady. It doesn't need to be heard to exist. You begin to act not to be noticed, but because it's right. You choose stillness not because you're afraid, but because you're free. Silence becomes your shield, not to shut out the world, but to protect what's sacred in you. And sometimes, that's the loudest thing in the room. There comes a point where explaining yourself becomes exhausting. Why you weren't chosen, why they misunderstood you, why you're still trying. You keep handing out pieces of yourself, hoping someone will finally say, "I get it." But often, they don't. And that's okay. Because growth doesn't require explanation. It requires direction. You don't need to justify your evolution. You just need to honor it. To follow the pull inside you that says, there's more. More to learn. More to build. More to become. Start the hobby you've been putting off. Enroll in that course, even if you feel late. Pick up the guitar. Write the first page. Do it not to prove, but to grow. Every new skill, every quiet step forward, is a vote of confidence in who you're becoming. And that is louder than words. The people who matter won't need your footnotes. They'll see it in your actions, in your consistency, in your quiet refusal to quit. The rest, let them stay confused. You're not a lecture. You're a life in motion. Stop explaining. Start creating. And trust that the right people, the ones who see with depth, not just with sight, they'll understand. Not because you told them, but because you lived it. When you're hurting, the last thing on your mind is joy. Fun feels out of reach, maybe even disrespectful to your pain. But here's the paradox. The heavier life gets, the more you need lightness to stay afloat. Fun isn't foolish. It's not some luxury you earn after life gets perfect. It's survival. It's repair. It's breathing space for the soul. A walk with a friend. That silly dance you do alone in your room. Trying something new, badly, and laughing at yourself. These aren't meaningless. They're medicine. Because joy is not just for the healed. It's for the healing. When you allow yourself to enjoy something in the middle of struggle, you reclaim your ability to feel. To remember that life isn't only made of wounds. There are still colors, still sounds, still laughter. The Stoics weren't cold. They didn't reject joy. They just chose not to chase it blindly. But when it came, they received it fully. Aristotle said, happiness depends on ourselves. And that means we get to choose joy even when it feels undeserved. Especially then. So sign up for that weekend trip. Play a game with your kids. Call the friend who makes you laugh till your stomach hurts. Not as a distraction, but as a declaration, I'm still alive. And this moment is still mine. Fun doesn't mean you're ignoring pain. It means you're letting joy live beside it. Rejection feels like destruction. Something collapses. Expectation, confidence, hope. But beneath the rubble, there's something else. Space. Space to rebuild. Most people fear that space. It's too quiet, too unfamiliar. But that silence, that emptiness, it's where your next chapter begins. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience, from lessons earned, from clarity you didn't have before. So let it hurt. Let it sting. Then start laying bricks. Small ones. Ones that matter to you. Go back to the gym. Not for appearance, but for strength. Pick up your tools. Not to impress, but to create. Write. Paint. Plant. Building. Not to prove something, but to reclaim something. Every time you invest in yourself, you shift the power from what was taken to what you choose to give to yourself now. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like him who did you wrong." And maybe that means turning the moment of rejection into a blueprint, a reason to refine, a reason to rise. So work on yourself, quietly, steadily, intentionally. You're not patching wounds, you're reinforcing foundations. Rejection didn't end your story. It cleared the space for something stronger to grow. And that's not failure. That's design. Kindness doesn't mean surrender. It doesn't mean silence equals weakness, or that being polite means being small. You can be kind and still hold your line, still say enough, still walk away without a single drop of bitterness on your tongue. Some confuse kindness with permission, but true kindness doesn't come from fear. It comes from self-respect. You're not being nice to win them back. You're being kind because you remember who you are. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius didn't advocate cruelty. They stood for dignity, for composure, for a grace that doesn't shake when it's ignored. You don't have to meet indifference with resentment, nor should you shrink yourself for approval. There is power in maintaining grace while keeping your distance. Emotional distance isn't cold, it's clarity. It's knowing when to give your energy and when to guard it. If someone repeatedly shows they don't value you, that doesn't mean you owe them less respect. It just means you owe yourself more boundaries. Be kind, but don't beg. Be polite, but don't pine. You can forgive without forgetting. You can respect without reconnecting. And most of all, you can walk away with your head high, your heart clean, and your dignity untouched. Because sometimes, kindness is not about making peace with them. It's about making peace with yourself. There's a difference between being quiet and being silenced. One is weakness, the other is wisdom. In a world that rewards reaction, silence feels unnatural. We're told to post, to clap back, to never let things slide. But sometimes, real strength is not in what you say. It's in what you choose not to. Because silence doesn't mean you have nothing to offer. It means you're not giving your energy to what doesn't deserve it. The Stoics weren't loud men. They didn't seek attention or demand to be right. They practiced control, not over others, but over themselves. When someone doubts you, mocks you, underestimates you, you don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to stay rooted. Keep working. Keep walking. Let your actions build a record that words could never match. Let them wonder why you didn't react. Let them sit in the silence they created, while you rise in it. Because sometimes, the loudest move is the one no one hears. No announcement. No drama. Just growth. Quiet, disciplined, undeniable. You're not here to win arguments. You're here to win peace. So speak when it adds value. Be silent when it protects your spirit. And trust that your strength will echo in everything you build. Not because you shouted, but because you didn't need to. Attention is addictive. That brief high when someone likes your post, mentions your name, claps for your effort. It feels good for a moment, but it fades, and then you chase it again. But the more you run after validation, the more power you give away. You start shaping your choices not by truth, but by applause, not by passion, but by performance. That's not living, that's surviving a stage. Fulfillment, on the other hand, asks a different question. What makes me feel whole even when no one's watching? The Stoics knew the difference. They lived for principles, not praise. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the quiet of his room, never intending to be quoted centuries later. His peace came not from being seen, but from knowing who he was, regardless. So ask yourself, what would you still do even if no one noticed? That's your truth. That's where joy begins. Build a life that feels honest in private. Laugh when it's just you. Celebrate your growth, even when the room is empty. Because the peace that comes from living aligned with your values, that peace is immune to rejection. And that kind of confidence, it can't be bought. It's earned in solitude, in repetition, in choosing substance over spotlight. Attention is borrowed, but fulfillment, that's yours to keep. There's a quiet kind of strength in being kind to someone who doesn't return it. It's not weakness. It's not naivety. It's integrity. You're not being kind to earn favor. You're being kind because that's who you are, regardless of how they respond. That's the heart of Stoic dignity. Doing what's right without needing the world to clap. Choosing grace not because it's rewarded, but because it's aligned with your values. And still, kindness isn't about being walked on. It's not about waiting for someone to wake up and finally treat you right. Kindness without expectation is clarity. You do what's right and let go of what's beyond your reach. You don't send the text to get one back. You don't offer help to be praised. You give because giving keeps you soft, not small. When you live this way, your heart stays open, but guarded. You stop pouring into people who show you they're not ready to receive. You begin to discern the difference between kind and self-sacrificing. Stoicism doesn't ask you to become cold. It asks you to become wise, to recognize when kindness is healing and when it's harming you. So give love, but also give yourself permission to step back. Speak gently, but also walk quietly away if your peace demands it. The goal isn't to be admired. It's to stay whole. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned not everything deserves your reaction. There's dignity in holding your power quietly. No announcements, no revenge plots, just peace. The world may never know how much you endured, how close you were to breaking, but you'll know, and that's enough. You don't have to advertise your strength for it to exist. You don't need to prove your recovery with a post or a comeback speech. Healing is sacred. And sometimes, the strongest healing happens in silence. Behind closed doors, under soft lights, one deep breath at a time. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about feeling everything and still choosing calm, still choosing to rise with intention, not impulse. Let people underestimate you. Let them misread your quiet. What they call weakness might just be wisdom they don't yet understand. You're not here to win over the room. You're here to build something that lasts beyond the noise. So stay soft, but unshakable. Humble, but unmovable. Present, but never performative. Let your actions speak in whispers. Let your presence echo through how you carry yourself. Not in what you say, but in who you choose to become. You are powerful, especially, when you don't have to prove it. You've just walked through a journey not of noise, but of stillness, not of fighting to be seen, but of learning to see yourself more clearly, through rejection, silence, self-doubt, and grace. You've been reminded of something quietly radical. You never needed to be chosen to begin choosing yourself. This isn't a call to harden. It's an invitation to live more gently, more truly, on your terms. So let me ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped needing to be understood and started living like you already are? If this message found something in you, stay with us. Leave a thought below, something real, something only you can say. And if the journey felt honest, subscribe. Not for us, for you. Because in a world that demands attention, your greatest rebellion may simply be to remain whole.